We started the meal service fairly early on in lockdown, and the reason for that was that I realised very quickly that there would be people isolating and being suddenly without their normal support network of friends and family who would also be isolating, or there would be very vulnerable people who would not be able to have their friends and family in their home. The big challenge was how to do it. We looked for a community kitchen, and I did put some volunteers through food handling courses. So we could have done it that way. But what I really needed was a professional kitchen, somebody that could do it. We didn't know what the demand would be, so we had to have capacity. And fortunately, a couple of weeks after lockdown, Lisa at the Harbour Tavern said, yes, she could do it. She was ready to do it, and she'd figured out how to do it. The one thing we weren't short of was volunteers. So we were able to put delivery rota in place very quickly. And because the volunteer group was set up with areas, geographical areas across the village, we could pick up volunteers very quickly because we'd already got a communication system in place. So we were able to do that. The most difficult part in terms of volunteering was the logistics of sorting out volunteers, getting the rota, making sure that everybody actually received a meal and received the meal that they'd actually ordered, and it was reasonably hot by the time it got there. So Mark Sweeney and Annie Butler have been instrumental in that. They've both worked extremely hard to get the logistics up and running, and it is an ongoing challenge. But they have got a very robust system and it works extremely well. Another thing that we had to do was a lot of the recipients, we have to ring them every week to find out what they want. Now, part of that service is also that they get a phone call every week, which is also very important to them. And it's not a matter of ringing them up for 2 minutes and saying, right, what would you like to eat? That's it, hello, goodbye. We've got a team of phone people who ring for people's orders every week, and they actually have a chat with people whilst they're ringing them. And that is as important, really, as them receiving a meal. So the meal service has done an incredible job. The people that are involved in meal service have done an amazing job. And the Harbour Tavern has completely changed the way they operate. Absolutely, completely changed. You know, people are not coming up to the counter and ordering food and sit down and then they receive it. It's been a totally different way of working for them. And of course, Lisa was worried about her staff. She had to keep the staff safe because we were starting this right at the very beginning of lockdown. So it was at the height of the risk of infection, which clearly still hasn't gone away, but at that time was very heightened. But the meal service is reducing now, so we're 4 months into it now, and it is naturally reducing because people are now receiving the help and support that they get naturally from friends and family. But last week we still delivered 700 meals. It's gone down. I don't think we quite hit 1,000, but we almost hit 1,000 every week. And we run the service 5 days a week. Fridays have been the most popular day, although fish and chips is on the menu 5 days a week, fish and chips on Friday, or scampi and chips, has been the most popular. And even those people who, generally speaking, do cook for themselves at home and have always cooked for themselves at home, mostly, and in fact I would say 100% of them, are not used to cooking a meal or 2 meals a day for themselves, day in, day out, 7 days a week. So they've lost the social network of going to one of the local cafes, say for example at lunchtime, and having a sandwich and a chat with their friends. They haven't done that. So the meal service it's been phenomenal. It's given a support to people, it's helped them to stay in contact with people, helped them to feel less isolated, and also there's been a couple of people on the meal service who have come onto the meal service because they've had serious health problems and hadn't wanted to ring the emergency services. But because our volunteers were in contact with them, we were able to help them with emergency first aid. We've got trauma and first aid carers that have the full PPEs that can go into people's houses and treat them. Okay. That hasn't happened a lot, but it's happened enough, and even if it's only happened once and we've been able to give that service, it's made a big difference. Yeah. There was another chap who was on the meal service who collapsed in his home, and it was the volunteer that was delivering to him that found that he was collapsed on the floor. So obviously he was treated by our emergency responders who rang paramedics who came and eventually took him into hospital. So it's not just about giving somebody a meal. I think everything else that's happened around it has been as important as giving a meal. Yeah. And I just am so grateful, and I know the community are grateful. We've had hundreds of cards and letters and phone calls of gratitude for the meal service. It's just been amazing. So it's a social need as well as a nutritional need.
I think that food generally is that, isn't it? It's a social need as well as a nutritional need in normal times. So when that's completely taken away from people, the fact that you've been there and Lisa's been there to be able to provide this service where it's for some people who have not needed the meals every day but have wanted it as a bit of a break, but you've provided them with an experience. Yes. And also just a little bit of normality in this completely crazy time that we've been living through. So
yeah. And I also should mention the Mevagissey Parish Council, who immediately when I said we've got this need, we need to address it, made funds available to get us started. We have had funding from other sources since, so the Parish Council actually have not had to pay for the whole thing. And most people that are on the meal service, although we've always had the policy of delivering a free service, we're not in the business of means testing anything. We're just, if you need something, we do it, and that's it. Yeah. But we've had a very significant amount of donations through to the group because of all the services they've received. Not just on the meal service, but most people on the meal service are donating. And those that can't don't, and that's fair enough. You know, we've got some funding to carry that on. Yeah. We're evolving now as the meal service reduces naturally, but of course we've got to think about how we can carry that on in the future. And we're undergoing a survey. The letters went out to all the recipients on Friday. So hopefully by the end of this week we will know roughly what kind of ongoing service and the level of service that's required in the community, and whether or not it's delivered in our community is yet to be decided, but we will make sure that there is some sort of service available to people who really need it in the future.
I think it's not just been the meal services either, because you're saying just about the food deliveries as far as moors and stuff as well. It's the same, isn't it? They've had to adapt to be able to. People have needed food.
Well, particularly in the first few weeks of lockdown, nobody could get a supermarket slot. People were shielded and self-isolated from day one, but they couldn't get food. Because of the infection risk, we've always had a policy where our volunteers do not handle cash. And there's always a risk when you have volunteers handling cash as well, from a security point of view. Not because anything is likely to go wrong, but it's just the suspicion that things might go wrong. So we've steered clear of taking money, but both of the food shops in the village have taken card payments over the phone, which is not something they ever did before. Or if they did, not to the extent that they have been doing. They certainly haven't had the home delivery service in place that is now in place at the moment. But again, that's reducing with less need. And it was because we had a huge team of volunteers to be able to deliver to people's homes that nobody should have, and I hope I can say that nobody has gone short of food in the village because they couldn't get a delivery. And then of course there's been the food bank, which we set up. Had a massive amount of donations into that. That was a really massive challenge because nobody wants to access the food bank. Even people that really need the food bank, they don't want to access it. So persuading people that it is there, again, there are no questions asked. Anybody can get food from the food bank whenever they need it. We don't ask any questions, and it hasn't been abused. It's never been abused, and the biggest challenge is getting people who really need it, and there are people in the village who need it, to actually access it. So we've put lots of things in place so that people can access that resource, and we even deliver to people's houses so they don't have to come into the food bank as well. I am suspecting, so we're 4 months now into when we first started, lockdown has been drastically relaxed, but as the furlough system through the government relaxes as well, I think there's going to be a lot more people losing their jobs, and then there's always a gap between somebody losing their job and either getting a new one, and of course there aren't going to be so many jobs available, and receiving their payments through the benefit system. And I do have to say, we've had a lot of contact with the local benefit system, and they have worked extremely hard to make sure that people get their benefits, but there is always a delay. And it's not because of the staff working in the offices, it is just naturally because it's a massive thing to organise that there is a delay. And so people are finding all of a sudden that they haven't got money to go and buy basic food or any food. So it is needed. It's a challenge to persuade people that they can access the food bank and they're not taking it away from other people. Because we've had a huge amount of donations of food from the community, but we've also got money donations so we can buy food to put in the food bank. And we do tailor it to people's needs. But yeah, it's a huge thing trying to persuade people that they can actually just come and get something for nothing, and they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I think people feel guilty, don't they? And they feel
They do.
embarrassed, and
Yeah, they do.
it has that stigma, and it doesn't need to have, because you guys are all just there, putting it out there to be able to help. That's it. It's such a selfless act. There is no judgment, is there?
There's absolutely no judgment,
to be able to help.
and there is no restriction for anybody to receive anything that we are making available. And what everybody has to remember in the community is that yes, the volunteers are giving up their time, and some of them are working extremely hard round the clock. Some of them do their bit every now and again, but every volunteer contribution, it doesn't matter what they've done, contributes to the whole, and a hell of a lot has been achieved in Mevagissey, an awful lot. And also recipients have to understand that they are helping by receiving help. It's much easier to offer help than receive it.
Yeah, or to ask for help.
Or to ask for it. It's
help.
extremely hard to receive or ask for help, but the volunteers get a lot of joy, I would say, about being able to help people. Helps them to feel better too. So it's a two-way thing.
So true. What's been the best thing for you, do you think? Been the best thing to come out of this crazy situation?
I would say the best things to come out of it is that more people know more people in the village. It's raised a lot of awareness about the makeup of our community. People have discovered houses that they never knew existed through delivering leaflets and food and prescriptions. I think we're all a lot more familiar with the village than we ever were before. Even people that were born and have lived here all their lives have discovered people and places they never knew existed. I've talked to a lot of people, particularly in the older generations, that I would never have come across, and I've had some really lovely conversations with people, which is great. I think the single thing that I've enjoyed about most of it, which I don't get to do very often because I have to deal with all the other stuff, is actually delivering something to somebody. I've loved that.
Yeah.
I haven't done much of it. I step in when there's emergency and there's nobody else to do it. But if I could change anything, I would say I'll let somebody else lead the volunteer group and I'll do the deliveries, because I just loved it. It was great. Delivering lunch or prescription or a shop delivery to somebody is just amazing. It's great. I loved it. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I've enjoyed the most.
Well, what you've all been doing has just been amazing. really. Just for somebody who lives in the village, which you probably won't keep this in the recording, but thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.